On the way to Liechtenstein, we then wanted to look good and prepare for the rally, and we dropped by the pomade shop in Munich and saw Stan Ginecca and Ginetta, and were equipped with hair gel, layrite, just to make ourselves look good. No product placement. Anyway, so we dropped by them and they were fantastic. They really, really helped out. We are in debt to them. They were just amazing. Had a marvelous time catching up, and I think we were with them for about 3 to 4 days from memory, and we left them and started on the way, and that was kind of when we were thinking, oh, this is kind of the start, because we'd just done the checkout party, had a brief stop, and then we were off again. We were ready to run across the country, just wearing the traditional Australian swimmers. So about 200 k's out, we had a fan belt snap, pulled off the autobahn, there was no power, and we're already like, what the hell's going on? So we pulled into a little mechanic shop. 2 massive burly guys, bikers. They're just looking at us like we're there to make trouble. They're smiling. We're Australian, hey! Weren't having a bar of it. We managed to communicate what was going on. And after a little while, they actually turned around. They became really, really nice. And we thought, from Russian mafia looking style characters, they turned into absolutely wonderful, generous people. And they were able to get us back on the road straight away, pretty much. And then we made our way to Switzerland, went round to Graham London to talk to them and a few other sponsors, Ex-Bionic. And then from there we went back to Hungary. So Hungary, we caught up with the Dalbert's uncle and auntie, who are absolutely beautiful, amazing people. And they told us off because we had done about 3,000-4,000 kilometers at that stage, and we didn't have any tools or equipment. And so they were shaking their head. They're just like, how can you? You guys are idiots, basically. I don't know, we're still prepared. We just have to talk our way to get things resolved. Might have been a little bit harder than having everything on us. Anyway, that aside, word spread throughout the village. We were in Jur, and suddenly everybody's riding around on bicycles, and they come over and they're bringing big baskets of fruit, and they're coming around with old metal barrels, and we're like, what are we doing with that? And they're like, it's for armor, We're like, armor, okay. So we cut up this old metal barrel, and we're in the backyard. We lay it out flat. We're welding parts to it, rungs and little just little bits of metal so that we could use it as points to hold it on. We drive the car over a big ditch that's in the ground. We get under and we're welding on, full OH&S. It was all supervised. So we did all that, and they were just incredibly generous. We managed to pick up a whole bunch of tools there. We picked up an esky and a few boxes and filled it with food, and a lot of it being pot noodles, and we were ready for the rest of the trip. So feeling headstrong and confident, we headed to Balaton, and there's a little party town there called Schielfuk, and we spent, I think we got there at midnight, so we spent a few hours there, and woke up the next day around 10ish, or who knows, we're not judging time here. And from there we had to get to Moscow and pick up Neil, so we drove up to Budapest, and it's about 100 k's up, and we're kind of getting some more supplies and waking up a little bit more, and we're like, you know what, Neil doesn't get in for about 5 days. What are we doing? Why rush this? Why? So we ended up turning around and spending another 4 days in Schielfuk, as you do. We met plenty of new friends along the way.
Very good.
In Budapest, it was kind of where it started. We were driving back to Jur 5 a.m. in the morning, and we met 2 lovely girls who had just watched Sex and the City, and decided that what they should do is hitchhike their way to Rome with very little, if not no money, and a small bag of clothes between the two of them. and why not? So, it's just a skip and a hop, right? So we gave them a lift to the Austrian border and saw them on their way. We are now good friends on Facebook with Georgina and Mila, and anyway, moving on, we went from Balaton up to the Ukraine. We did this in about 2 days, actually. Balaton to Kiev, and Kiev, we had to actually go down to Kharkiv and then up through the border crossing there to Moscow. So we crossed the Hungary border to the Ukraine, and then the Ukraine border to Russia. And the border crossings were where all the trouble started. Ukraine was really where it started to turn a little bit more hairy. So we got all the border crossings. I don't know why. For some reason we were doing it about midnight, which could have worked to our advantage because it seemed to be a bit quieter, and we were able to talk a bit more easily with the very friendly officers that were patrolling the borders. We found out that although we thought we were having trouble getting across, in about 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours was the longest each took until we got to Mongolia, which was a 19-hour border crossing. But that's all because we were importing the ambulance, and they had to know a lot of details before we were allowed to cross. Anyway, so back to the Ukraine border. The first thing that they do is that they look and they inspect the vehicle, and they see all the piles of boxes and the stretchers and all our clothes, and it was all orderly, but that's all they saw. And they'd walk up and they shine a light in, they just kind of look, they're like, what's in this box? And you're like, food. What's in this box? Clothes. Oh, okay, it's good. We're like, alright. So it got to the point, after arguing about documentation, because our name wasn't on anything, we didn't officially have ownership over the car, because basically when we bought it, the information that we were given was it would take about 2 weeks to receive the V5, which is the official registration document in England that you get after you purchase the car. But the guy that we bought it from, he's like, oh, you can just take the proof of purchase, that will be plenty and that'll be enough. So we're like, sure, why not? As you do. So we were there, we were having lots of arguments. Dawit had the advantage of being able to speak Hungarian, so that helped a lot. And what happened was, we got to the point, after being able to prove that we owned it, just sweet talking them basically, and we did find a document that added up, and it was a very big learning curve for the next border crossings. But basically the guy turns around and he's like, now the lights. We're like, what about them? He's like, do they work? We're like, it's an ambulance, we don't know, we're told it's disconnected. He's like, okay, press this button. We're like, this button? He's like, no, this button. We're like, this button. He's like, press this button. So we press the button. All the lights, of course, are working. They go off like, woo, woo, woo. They're just shining everywhere, the good old blues. And we're like, oh, what? Wow, they work. Incredible. So he didn't like that at one bit. Then he's like, what about the siren? Now, the good thing about the siren is that where the lights are, it's a separate area to the dashboard that you can press all these buttons and they do different things. And the siren, you could press a button, but to activate it, you have to press the horn, so it's a double whammy. Whammy! Anyway, so you press the siren button and nothing happens, so we're like, yeah, see, it's disconnected, so you get a bit of a grunt from him, like, okay. But the lights, he didn't like that, so up they get on the roof and have a look, and Dalbert jumps up, and we're passing up big garbage bags and tying up the garbage bags over the lights with some gaffer tape, and that was enough to make them happy. Basically, we had a 5-day transit visa, so we're just passing through. So after lots of arguing, they're like, oh, it's for charity, who cares, just let them go. So we got through. We then ended up next to we slept that night in a fuel station and woke up next to a big mine and a guy walking his goat, which was our welcome to the Ukraine. We made Kiev by the second night and in the Ukraine, and we managed to find a hotel that we could... get valet parking at. Turned out valet parking didn't exist, and that was the reason we had chosen this whole place. And instead, we had to park our car along beside the hotel there. We'd heard rumors about carjacking and it being very dangerous and all this kind of stuff, but we didn't have a problem. And we got there about 12 o'clock, decided we wanted to see the town, so we went out at about 1 AM. And we actually ended up at a little bar called Avalon, and we hung out there, and that was quite a fun time, dancing on the dance floor there, and meeting new people and that kind of stuff. Then this is after being driven from the hotel by a taxi driver that they organized, who was absolutely trashed. He was drunk, and we were holding on for dear life as he drove through the streets, and finally got there. And then we wanted to have what was it, a chicken in Kiev, as you do. We couldn't find that, so we ended up with a kebab, which was great. It was a Monday night, and we were in Avalon, and we had an old-fashioned, cheeky old-fashions. We started having old-fashions on Monday, and it actually started to get picked up by the bars, old-fashioned Mondays in Sydney, and old-fashioned Mondays were what we started doing. So every Monday, you have an old-fashioned, you sit down, you look quite gentlemanly, and recollect and discuss philosophy and that kind of thing. But it's a beautiful city, and we both love to go back. The Russian border, we did a very similar thing. About 3 hours we were across. What we didn't know was that you needed insurance. Well, when I say that, we knew we needed it, which was a very informative officer in the Ukraine decided to pull us over after we'd been driving. I think it was halfway through the first day, and he pulls us over to the side of the road and has a load of arguments and shouting and just moving us around, like, you stand here, now you come here, now you do this, and you don't have insurance, Obviously he's saying this all in Russian. We couldn't understand him at all. We knew exactly what he wanted, but we just played dumb. So after about an hour, he's like, alright, I'm bored of you guys, get out of here. So we jump back in the ambulance, we're like putting the documentation away, and he comes back and there's thud, 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 thud on the side of the door. We're like, oh, what now? He's like, come. So we walk out and follow him around to the front of his car, and he's like, hands. So, we got on the front of the car and we're forming the position, thinking we're going to be frisks. He's like, no, push. So we had to push start this cop's car, and we're like, is this really happening? We're pushing it backwards down the street, people are driving by, anyway, we did that and we drove off. And so we did realize we needed insurance for Russia, but the problem was that once we got over the border, you could buy it right on the border, but they didn't have an ATM, and there was nowhere to exchange money or get the money from. So we were stuck. So from the Russian border, we drove all the way to Moscow, which was about a day's worth of driving without any insurance, and we were just very lucky we didn't get pulled over.